Guess who's back? It's us. My name is Chris Gillespie. I'm one of the hosts of Go Chuck Yourself.
My name is Erin, and I am also one of the hosts of Go Chuck Yourself.
What a small world. Who would have thought that two hosts of Go Chuck Yourself would be together recording an episode of Go Chuck Yourself?
It's actually kind of amazing.
It's very serendipitous.
We don't even live in the same states, and yet we found each other somehow.
Right. It worked out really well. What's the word? Kismet? Is that the word? I think this is Kismet.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. There's a restaurant in the city that I live in, Los Angeles, called Kismet. It's a really good restaurant. It's like Mediterranean.
So on this episode of Go Chuck Yourself, we're actually continuing from last week's concept, which was a journey into the Season 5 bonus features that are available on the Season 5 DVD and Blu-ray set. There was just too many bonus features last week to cram into one episode, so Erin and I got together. We had a very long conversation. It was behind closed doors. I won't repeat all of it. There could have been, hidden microphones, and maybe this conversation will be revealed 60 years after the fact, like in the Get Back documentary about the Beatles on Disney Plus, where you hear Paul and John talk about something that's never been heard before. Maybe that will come out. But the end result is that we said, let's just do 2 episodes.
What were they talking about that's never been heard before? Was it like dirty secrets?
They were just talking candidly. Like, it was just them talking as friends. Like, and no one's ever really heard that before, because if you're there dealing with a third party, what do they call that? That's the Heisenberg effect.
You're pulling out all these words. I should know these things, but no, not at the top of my game in terms of knowing words today.
Well, it would be sort of like when you and I talk without the microphones involved. It's a little different than when we talk with the microphones involved, wouldn't you say?
I'm an open book, and what you see here is what you get, and my persona on Go Chuck Yourself is exactly the same as my persona in real life. I always talk at this volume and this cadence. As you can, we've been friends for over 10 years now, you know this, but to our audiences, this is exactly how I behave in my day-to-day life. If you saw me on the street, this is how I'd be talking. This is a great opening. I'm having a great time.
There's something about the bonus features, because last week we did that whole bit where we were allegedly performed by actors and we're just characters, which I think is fascinating. I think we should both present it to both our respective therapists. Yeah. But there's something about doing the bonus features that makes us very meta and self-reflective about what it is Go Chuck Yourself is, because it's straight. Now that I'm thinking about it, I behave very differently when we're doing Go Chuck Yourself than, because we were just talking before this. I would say I was almost a different person than when we started. I just turn it on for the microphone.
We're making extreme revelations here in our 5th season. Our audience is not going to trust us anymore.
No, I guess not. But
you can trust our opinions on these bonus features.
Take our word for
it. We talked last week about deconstructing the Buy More. We talked about the score of Chuck. What else was there? We watched the Buy More commercials several times. There
was the gag reel. There was also kind of a behind the scenes look at the filming of the final episode of Chuck.
Right.
Interviews with the cast. There was sandwiches and superfans. When they
personally thanked you, Chris Gillespie.
Correct.
So that was interesting. I was actually, I was saving this to tell you when I was planning, when we started this episode, to start playing Big Mike's 1970s commercial that you just loved and played for me several times last week. But I was distracted because when I searched Big Mike Chuck commercial, what actually came up was a wonderful entrepreneur named Big Mike who sells mattresses. And he has a lot of commercials with him and his kids that seem to have been made in Windows Movie Maker in maybe 2005. So I watched that for a little while, and then I forgot what I had been planning to do originally. So this bit is not to be, but everyone search Big Mike's mattresses, or maybe he was on a couch as well, so he might sell multiple items of furniture. I'm actually moving soon, and we're going to be looking for furniture. So if Big Mike's still in business and he's in the Southern California area, which I did not check, might patronize him.
Remember to go to Big Mike's website and use the code GCY to get 30% off your first purchase from Big Mike's Furniture. That code again is GCY.
Other podcasts are sponsored by Casper. We're sponsored by Big Mike.
Big Mike's Furniture.
Thanks, Big Mike.
Big furniture, big deals.
That's good. Yeah, we should present that to Mike.
A Big Mike or regular Mike?
Oh, just Big Mike. Big Mike. Yeah. Well, actually, this is the thing: is that like us having different personalities on our podcast, in his personal life, Mike is just Mike, but in mattress sales, he is Big Mike. Do you think that Big Mike, the character in Chuck, like, do you think Bologna calls him Big Mike to her friends or to his face, or do you think she calls him Michael? Maybe like a Miguel kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
Or like maybe she calls him Mi Amor. I'm sure they have pet names for each other, but like, do you think he's Big Mike in his personal life as well as in his professional life?
I think Big Mike is on the level of, like famous celebrities who just have their one name. You have Madonna, you have Cher.
Zendaya.
You have
Sting.
Bono.
Why did you not say Bono first? Come on.
I was thinking about Bono, as I always am, but I didn't want to say it first because I knew you would make fun of me. But you somehow managed to still make fun of me despite me not doing the thing that I thought would prompt the making fun of. So I think much like Bono is pretty much recognized as Bono by everyone, including, I think I don't know what his wife does. I don't know, or The Edge. The Edge is basically known as To the Edge by everyone. So I think Big Mike is known as Big Mike at home, on the go, wherever he is Big Mike.
Done.
So our focus today really is a series of little miniature documentary segments that are on the bonus feature disc. There's 3 of them, but we can probably just talk about them all sort of as one piece because they go in chronological order.
They do go in chronological order. We're talking about the beginning of Chuck, which is kind of about like filming the pilot. Then they talk about Chuck through the years, which is kind of a like retrospective on all of the characters and how they have grown, and how their growth relates to the actors' growth, which we'll talk about if that's forced or if that's natural. And then, of course, we have Chuck and the future, which I thought was going to be about like them hinting at a movie or something, which they kind of do, I guess. But it's mostly about like how the actors imagine the characters' futures. Mm-hmm. So they're all kind of a piece. That's why we saved them for a future episode, which is now happening today.
But before we get into that, Erin had wanted to discuss some kind of para-Chuck experience that she had. It's not Chuck related, yes, but it's para-Chuck, Chuck tangential, with one of the cast members of, not cast members of Chuck, but a featured player of Chuck.
Featured, yeah.
Last night you watched a film.
Last night I watched the film Chocolat, which is from the year 2000. It's French. It's based on a novel. It's about like a traveling chocolate saleswoman who shakes up a little French town. And it's pretty good. If like Johnny Depp is in it, which is like a little bit like cringy now, but like he's pretty charming in it. So it's like, if you can get past that, like it's fine. And Alfred Molina plays the mayor of the small town. And of course, our best friend, my contemporary, Carrie Ann Moss, is playing one of the town's people. So in the movie, Carrie Ann Moss and Alfred Molina, who's like a gruff, like authority figure in this town, kind of have a little romantic vibe. And then it's implied at the end that they eventually get together, because they're both widowers, widow and widower, whichever way that works. And so I texted Chris because I was thinking Alfred Molina is kind of like an alternate universe Casey. Like they kind of have similar vibes. Mm-hmm. And Chris responded, I was not ready for this, which I'm wondering, did you mean that you were under the influence and you were just not capable of handling what I was throwing at you? Or did you mean that I was spilling such truths that you were just shocked and awed and weren't ready to discuss it, but maybe you're ready now?
Well, to begin, I'm just because you texted me late on a Friday night, your default assumption was that I'm, quote, under the influence, which sounds way worse than just, maybe having had some drinks or whatnot. But so I guess the truth would be that it was, I guess, between both of those. It was a little bit of each. I was fine. I don't know why you keep calling me out on stuff in this episode, but yeah, maybe I had a couple of drinks last night. You texted me at after midnight Eastern time.
Yeah, I know.
So there's that. So I was like, who's texting me this late? And I was like, oh, it's Erin. I was like, oh, that's right. She lives on the West Coast. And then I was like, what is she texting me to say? And I was not ready to, because in my mind, Alfred Molina he's Doc Ock primarily.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he's also. Are
you gonna say the Cardinal in the Da Vinci Code? Because that's what I think of him as.
The painter in the Frida Kahlo movie.
Oh, okay.
He's the male lead in that. So.
Sure.
I was not ready for you to compare Casey to Alfred Molina or say that Alfred Molina potentially could play Casey in an alternate universe.
Yeah.
That was just...
Well, okay, but thinking about it now that you've had like 12 hours to let that kind of decompress, I think they're both like kind of like broad-shouldered, like hefty, like strong men.
Yeah.
They're both brunette. They both have kind of like, at least in the film, like I am not an Alfred Molina expert. Like you, I only know him from a couple of roles, but like in a lot of the roles I've seen him in, he's kind of like an authority figure with like a suppressed soft side. I don't know if in the Frida movie, I haven't actually seen that. But like, I feel like in terms of what he's in, like Alfred Molina and Adam Baldwin aren't necessarily like of a piece in what they're cast in, where their interests lie. I feel like Alfred Molina is in a lot more like films. Adam Baldwin seems to like gravitate towards television in some ways. Of course, he is in American Underdog. So, and I could just be like making all of this up, but I do think that they are like Alfred Molina would do well in a Casey role. I think he could handle it. But he would kind of bring like a sophisticatedness, I think, like a kind of like artistry to the Casey role, which I don't know if Casey needs.
Right. I think that I do associate Alfred Molina as more of a actor with a capital A.
Yeah.
And I feel like he does have my minimal experience with him, there is a tenderness to him. Not that Casey doesn't have also a softer side, but I think that he tends to, there's a little bit more humanity in Alfred Molina's performance. This is, of course, Go Alfred Molina Yourself, the #1 Alfred Molina podcast.
It's a shame. I mean, you probably wouldn't know this, but we are, in fact, not the only Emersonians with a podcast talking about Alfred Molina at this time.
Oh shit! I didn't mean to step on anyone's toes.
That's okay. I think Jamie Loftus will be okay without us cribbing her love of Alfred Molina. Yeah,
she'll probably be fine. So also, before we get into Chuck, I also have to take us through this thought experiment. And look, listener, there's going to be spoilers of the film Spider-Man No Way Home coming up. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, skip ahead a couple minutes. Okay, now that those people are gone. So now I'm one.
Are we going to do the opposite?
Right. I'm intrigued if there was a extended cut or alternate version of No Way Home where there's Doc Ocks from across the multiverse, and one of those Doc Ocks is played by Adam Baldwin. I think he would be a really good Doc Ock.
I think he would too. He would be a little bit more like, I feel like Alfred Molina definitely plays like the sinister element of Doc Ock. Like he's definitely scary, but I think like Adam Baldwin has like a coldness and a sharpness to him that I think would really work in the Doc Ock role. I think he would be great. He would be Doc Ock, but with a gun.
Just one gun? Like that the mechanical arms hold, or all 4 mechanical arms are each holding their own individual gun?
I think his like human hands would be holding 2 guns, and then his mechanical arms would just be doing their mechanical things. Did you know that there's a forthcoming Kirby game where Kirby has a gun? I learned that last night.
Kirby, the name of the game is just called Kirby Has a Gun. And you run around as Kirby and you just have a gun and you do whatever Kirby does.
Nice.
But he has a gun and it's like...
He has a gun now.
He's done swallowing things and changing shape. He's just got the gun and he's doing this. This is the gritty reboot of Kirby that we've all been waiting for.
We've all been waiting for it.
Okay, I've also been waiting to talk about Chuck this goddamn episode, so let's get into it.
Okay.
Chuck the Beginnings.
Chuck the Beginnings.
Where to begin?
So apparently Josh Schwartz and Chris Fedak conceptualized Chuck in the year 2006. And Chris Fedak brought the idea of a computer nerd, like a guy getting a computer in his head. And Josh Schwartz, who apparently was fresh off the OC, is bringing, like, I guess he wanted to, like, age up the OC characters and wanted to, instead of addressing, like, a 8th life crisis, he wanted to address a quarter life crisis. Because I guess, like, that he was around that age. Like, I guess that kind of makes sense. Like, he was probably, like, young 20s writing the OC, and now he's, like, older 20s. So he's just, like, 5 years ahead. He's, like, reflecting on periods of his life. I don't know. I can't psychoanalyze Josh Schwartz here, but...
I don't know why I like throwing shade at Josh Schwartz, but because he kept
really
saying,
do.
And then I kept pausing while we were watching to make snide comments about Josh Schwartz, which I have nothing against him, but I just thought it was funny that he's like, yeah, you know, for my next show, I really wanted to do something completely different. And we've talked about it a little bit on air, but Erin has watched the OC and has texted me constantly of like, this is exactly how it is in Chuck. Like, there's so many similarities.
Yeah.
So he really wasn't switching up his formula that much, but
they're older.
They're older, basically the same characters, but it's they're not basically the same characters. I don't know why I have this complex against Josh Schwartz, but
it's like, I think you're mad at him because, like, obviously you were really, like, obsessed with him when he liked our tweet. Like, you were so into that.
He did like our tweet. And then I
think, like, he hasn't given you attention in the year since, so I think you're kind of like, you're mad at him. You're holding it against him. It's not his fault.
So Fedak and Schwartz are obviously, you know, like the central duo behind Chuck. Mm-hmm. If you had to tag us as Fedak and Schwartz, which one of us do you think would be who? I
mean, like, I think Josh Schwartz is cooler than Chris Fedak. That's
don't like where this is going, but okay.
That's definitely the vibe that they present, at least in these documentaries. Like, obviously, they're both, like, successful men in Hollywood, and Chris Fedak is writing Ambulance, which is coming to a theater near you soon. Might even actually be out by now, depending on when this is released. So, you know, I like to think that I'm the Josh Schwartz because, like, I'm hip and I'm with the youths right now. But I fear that I am actually the Chris Fedak. But your name is Chris, so, like, that's a big flag in your court.
Yeah, I'm probably the Chris Fedak, which is fine. It's okay.
Yeah, he's cool.
He's the ideas man. Yeah,
he's the ideas man, and I feel like he's like he had. Of those two things, like, of a person gets a computer in their head versus a person has a quarter life crisis, like, which of those is more of a concept? Which of those are you going to be more interested in watching? I think it's the person, like, at least more developed is the person with the computer in their head. Like, that's an idea. That's something you could sell. Like, the other thing just sounds like a Judd Apatow movie. So, something that really stood out to me here, though, is that they compare, like, the proto-Chuck idea in their head to Jim Halpert from The Office, which is, like, I'm sure we've talked about, like, Krasinski versus Levi. Like, I know that's a thing on the internet. People, like, have gotten them confused before. Like, they're very similar. I think that Levi has more of a Midwestern energy, and Krasinski kind of has, like, a Eastern energy. But, like, otherwise, they're pretty of a piece. But, like, did that catch you off guard when they said that?
Well, because the analogy that they use when they talk about the origins of the show, where they compare it, which is something that they, like, when you learn about pitching stories, whether they're books or movies, TV shows, they always tell you to reference the combination of two well-known successful properties. So they constantly are saying, like, oh, it's like The Office meets 24. I've never seen
Is that
24.
what they were referencing? I had no idea what they were referring to there. Okay.
I don't know if that's what they were in this instance, but that's what they usually do. So, you know, I don't think it's a perfect analogy because I think that The Office has a very specific tone and is definitely grounded in reality in a way that Buy More is, you know, I guess grounded in reality, but
I feel similarly that, like, I have exclusively watched The Office as a teenager. Like, I haven't watched it as an adult. So, of course, these characters would feel like adult to me. But I feel like Jim has his life together way more than Chuck does at the beginning of this show.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I think he is disillusioned with his job. Like, he doesn't like working at the office being a paper salesman. But he's also not as nerdy as Chuck is. So I think the nerd element is a little amplified for Chuck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But because it was this amalgamation of tones and styles, like a lot of the cast said that they were really interested in the script and thought it was really cool. Josh Gomez thought that the show was actually too cool to actually work. Like, he thought that it would work narratively, but he didn't think that a network would actually put it in prime time. So
it was really interesting hearing them, like, if the scoring by our friend, what was his name?
Tim Jones.
Tim Jones had been a little different, and if the cutting had been a little different, like, it really read to me like the cast was just kind of shitting on the show and be like, this isn't gonna go anywhere, like, that this is too niche for people. But they were actually, like, saying it in a complimentary way, like, this is so cool that it's not gonna work. There's nothing like this on TV. There's not shows that focus on nerds. There's not shows that combine all of these genre elements and kind of, like, mush them all together. And it was really interesting. Like, it's interesting to think about, because especially, like, I think that there are action comedies that probably existed before this and at this time, but, like, especially on network TV and, like, on NBC, like, it wasn't the prime time. Like, there's not a lot I can think of.
Yeah, well, I think it definitely was unique in terms of prime time, but also in terms of I don't know. I think it's interesting because it was more niche for its time, but now comparatively looking back at it with the advent of streaming services, it actually seems quite broad if you think about it, because I think, like, it's this weird midway point between the broadness of network television and also, like, the extreme nicheness of streaming services.
Yeah.
It's this kind of, I guess, forefront, like, kind of like a forerunner of those kinds of shows that kind of trend in television.
That's actually really interesting. I think we should we can progress from podcasts to, like, scholarly articles at this point.
Despite our best efforts, sometimes we actually have thoughtful ideas to share. So yeah, I mean, one of the people that really fell in love with the pilot was Zachary Levi, of course, and it was actually kind of touching watching him or listening to him talk about it, because he actually got choked up talking about reading the pilot, because it was a moment where he said that he instantly related to the character of Chuck so much and knew that he would be perfect for it, and it is just really special because obviously he was, and it would go on to change the course of his life. So it's I'm not getting choked up right now, but I could. I want to get choked up.
In a way, he was an American underdog, and Chuck is what kind of made him what's the opposite of an underdog? A regular dog, an upper dog.
A ringer? I think a ringer would be the opposite of an underdog, right? Like a surefire thing.
Yeah, okay.
He was an American underdog, and then all of a sudden, Doc Schwartz showed up, and they said, "Shazam! You're a TV star."
Exactly.
And then he was all like, "Wow, I'm all tangled up in Hollywood now."
That was pretty good. I was struggling because I was trying to go, like, the Flynn Rider element, where I was like, he's riding into Hollywood, but yours is better. Yours is more evident.
And he was overwhelmed by everything, but then Doc and Schwartz sat him down and said, "Hey, look, Zach, you're the star." Wow,
that was incredible. Iconic moment from our host, Chris Gillespie.
They also, like Zach was saying, that another really special thing about the show was that right off the bat, the cast had this kind of unique chemistry, even though none of them had really worked together ever before. But watching the first episode, you feel that, because you do feel like these are characters that have known each other for a long time. They're family, they're friends, and that's just a really cool thing, serendipitous thing again. to happen.
I thought it was kind of interesting. I mean, obviously there's no reason that they would mention this, but I was wondering about that cut character, the Chuck's neighbor.
Yeah.
They showed pictures of the cast, and there was one where there was this kind of suspicious gap where it looked like someone had been photoshopped out. And I was wondering if I was just reading too much into that, or if they actually like photoshopped that actress out.
No, you're probably right. They probably almost definitely did. And it's interesting too, because I think, well, this is sort of moving into the next part where Chuck through the years and the character evolution, but Schwartz had said that basically in 2007, if you were going to make a show or have a comedy show, you had to have a slacker best friend character.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which is the advent of Morgan. Or I'm sorry, Fedak actually said that, not Schwartz. I apologize. And so I wonder if that extra female lead was another kind of way of playing into an archetype of being like, oh, well, if you're going to have a show, you have to have a love triangle.
Yeah.
Which of course Chuck sort of went on to do anyways in multiple ways.
Definitely does, but like I was thinking about it, like Chuck's relationship has pretty much been Sarah. Like he had like maybe like 3 episode arcs, which with obviously like Rachel Bilson and with Hannah, whose actress I can't remember, I'm sorry. But he really didn't like. It was really just like he met Sarah and she was kind of the one. Like it was always. Which is interesting, because that's 5 seasons of romantic tension. That's why I feel like Chris Fedak didn't need to have the romantic tension in the last episode. But, it's fine.
Well, I mean, there's also the love triangle, like Sarah and Shaw.
Yeah.
And Chuck.
But, like, that's different. Like, Sarah, I feel like, was not, like, I mean, Sarah is the second lead of the show, but is, like, I was thinking of it from Chuck's perspective more so than hers. It makes total sense to me that she would not be interested in Chuck the whole time and that she would have other interests, suitors. But even she doesn't have, like, she just has Shaw. There's not other people. Oh, I guess she has Bryce, but, like, that's kind of like the lead-in.
Yeah.
Bryce. I don't know. He should have been mentioned in season 5, I feel like.
Yeah, he didn't get mentioned at all. And,
no.
Well, I mean, he was alluded to, but the characters didn't necessarily allude to him.
Yeah. Couldn't afford that bomber budget this season.
So you had mentioned that you maybe feel that it was forced talking about the evolution of the characters as they compare to the evolution of the actors.
I said we would discuss it.
Oh.
I wouldn't say that I necessarily like they definitely had something they wanted to discuss. They wanted to make these parallels. Mm-hmm. And I think that it definitely works for they talk about how Zachary Levi kind of became more of a leader, gained confidence in himself, they talk a lot about his masculinity and how he became a man, which is whatever, but they talk about how he matures and how when he starts he's a shrimpy nerdy guy, and then by the end he's become a spy in the show as Chuck, and then in real life he's become a full-fledged ringer, as we said. Mm-hmm. And then they talk about Yvonne was this was her first American role, and she hadn't really done a lot of work with comedy. She'd mainly only worked in Australia. And then by the end, she's become they call her a starlet, which I guess is true. For them, it totally makes sense. I think fitting Joshua Gomez and Adam Baldwin into this narrative, I think works, but they kind of have less to say when they get over to them is just kind of my sense. But you tell me what you think. Well,
I think that, I think that's true. I mean, someone in the show, one of the producers said that Adam Baldwin and Casey come into the show as a badass and they leave as a badass.
Yeah.
So Casey, obviously, they do a good job of having a character arc for Casey where you do get to see him have a family or him have a love interest, a softer side, him dealing with I guess on some level having his masculinity challenged in ways, forcing him to be emotionally present in a way that his macho exterior has not really prepared him for. And I mean, Morgan's growth as a character is also, I guess, just something that who could say exactly the extent of Josh Gomez's career before Chuck and after Chuck, what that looked like. But, Morgan definitely matures and grows as a character.
Definitely. Yeah, I think both characters grow as characters, but they talk less about how they grew as people in relation to like how their growth paralleled their real life growth. But something that stood out to me about when they were talking about Morgan is that something that they seem to consider endearing about him, and this was coming directly from feedback, was when he lists that he's filled with love for Ellie Bartowski as like, this is like one of the things that makes him unique and lovable. They literally call him a sweet, lovable friend. And maybe if we were watching in 2007, maybe we'd be down with that. But like, I feel like that was one of the things I hated about him. Like, that was something that made him not lovable for me.
If you haven't listened to our early episodes from the first two seasons, I guess, we really hated Morgan. I forgot. Yeah. I don't think about this often because he really...
Oh, I think about it all the time.
I think he's changed, like, in the 4th and 5th seasons, like, and maybe even some of the 3rd, like, he's been pretty good. So, like, we kind of got over it, but, like, we found him to be deeply problematic in the first 2 seasons, and... reprehensible, one might say. We killed him multiple times in Chuck, Marry, Kill. But he that has changed completely. So I'm glad that they did change that. Yeah. Because the early iteration of the character was not something that holds up as well. And I do think eventually that he does actually become, as he matures, he does become a little bit more quote unquote lovable and like enjoyable as a friend. And like, so I think they got him there eventually, even if they did not, where they started out was not necessarily the best or most fun.
So you want to move into the future?
Yes, I guess that is how time works. We are moving linearly into the future. So they basically, in this little segment, it was shorter than the other ones, the cast was kind of just speculating on what they think happens to the characters after the final episode comes to a close. Some of the theories I can run through real quick. Zach Levi thinks that the series ends on a positive note and that Sarah does, regain her memories and they're going to be on their way to rebuilding their life together.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but he didn't exactly say he thinks she's going to regain her memories. He just said they're on their way. So it's kind of interesting how I wonder if he does actually have a definitive thought about it, but they wouldn't allow him to like ruin the ambiguity of it, or if like he was just purposely or like unconsciously saying like, I don't know exactly what happened, but I do think they're going to stay together.
That's fair. I misspoke when I said that she gets her memories back. I should have said that that was my interpretation of it. He seems to think that it ends on a positive note. Yeah. And I am inclined to agree with that.
Keeping you honest, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, you're really putting me on blast this episode. Oh my God. Let's see. What else do they think?
Morgan and Alex get married. Josh Gomez feels very strongly that they have twins who both come out of the womb with beards. Which sounds probably pretty fair. I think Josh Gomez is probably a pretty hairy guy, so I imagine that his offspring are also hairy. I'm sorry if you have children, Josh Gomez. Your children, I'm sure, are beautiful and wonderful in the light of your life. And Casey walks, Alex down the aisle and becomes a present grandfather. They do, between Adam Baldwin and Fedak Schwartz, they have some pretty comical ideas for what might happen to Casey after the show ends. They don't really mention him getting together with Verbansky. No, she's kind of not. The show definitely implies that that's going to happen, but they don't really talk about it in this at all.
What they do talk about is Casey opening up his own firing range, which sounds pretty legit. Yeah. They said that he's going to have a goatee, which I think Adam Baldwin now actually has a goatee. Yeah. But then someone else was saying that Casey opens up a comedy club and starts doing improv.
He's got to channel that energy somewhere.
I wonder if Bill Hader watched these bonus features and said, that's an idea for an HBO show, and then went and started Barry.
Yeah, that's the plot of Barry, of course.
Are you not familiar with Barry? No,
I know what Barry. When does he do improv in Barry? I guess it's kind of improv. It's like acting,
Oh yeah, I guess he's not strictly doing comedy.
He doesn't have a comedy club.
Oh my God, you're so difficult this episode.
I'm sorry.
Someone get Erin a cup of coffee or something. I don't know what's going on.
I have actually not had coffee today, so that is probably part of it.
Look how well I know you. I can tell when there's no caffeine in your system.
I thought it was really interesting when they talked about initial plans to have Vic and Scott or Jeff and Lester be the Q team of the show.
Oh, this was really interesting.
It's difficult to imagine that the way that the show played out, like they would have had to have like their redemption, quote unquote, redemption arc, like way earlier for that to work.
Mm-hmm.
Or the show would have had to have been like 7 seasons, because I think like it definitely makes sense for like when Jeff and Lester discover Castle, like maybe there would have been like a couple episodes where they're like trying to convince them that it was just a hallucination, and then they become part of the team. Like if the show was longer, I could definitely imagine that happening.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the show is now, like they were just so bumbling. I can't imagine them like being like the science experts.
Right. Like Jeff would have to be sober before that could even happen. And so they don't even make Jeff sober until the start of the 5th season.
Yeah.
They also don't really, I mean, Jeff seems to be pretty smart when he's clear-headed, but
yeah,
there's never any kind of, they don't really build, I mean, I guess they do a couple of impressive tech things, but not to the extent that they would be able to create their own gadgets.
Well, don't they defeat the Omen, I guess?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that there seem to be, like, when you go through the bonus features or you listen to, FEDAC talk about stuff, that there seems to be a lot of, like, I don't want to say cliched ideas, but they're certainly banking a lot on, conventional things or archetypes that are in the spy genre that they could play with. Because I think back to also how they wanted to make Awesome a Russian spy in the first season and get him out of the picture. And then also they're saying now that they want Jeff and Lester could have been like the tech people.
Yeah.
And it's kind of forcing these characters into these boxes, like these predefined structures. And I think it works better not doing that. Like, I'm glad that they have Devin just kind of be the character that he ends up being. And
I agree.
Jeff and Lester, albeit problematic at times, are somewhat redeemed at the end of the show. So I'm glad that they didn't really adhere to that structure as much as they may have set out to.
Yeah.
Speaking of Devin, they, Sarah Lancaster thinks that Devin and Ellie go to Chicago and they have more children, and then those children have children, and there's a whole awesome family of grandchildren, and I guess that's nice.
Yeah.
Although I guess it means they never move back to California. They just always stay in Chicago.
I thought she was going to say at one point, like, and then we move back and we're with Chuck and his family. But no, she didn't say that. But like, she's done her time as a member of the Chuck support system. Okay, so what do you think? Do you want to share your opinions on where you think the future leads the Chuck characters?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question to ask me. What I think happens to the Chuck characters are we saying, like, are we speculating? Are we pitching ideas for the Chuck movie or like Chuck reboot? Or are we just saying, like, broad strokes what happens to the characters?
I was thinking broad strokes. Maybe in a future episode we could talk about a movie, what we would do.
Broad strokes, I think that I think Chuck and Sarah are probably okay. I think that they probably start a family at some point, and I think they probably enjoy that. I would like to think that their tech company version of Carmichael Industries that Sarah was planning before she had her mind erased comes to fruition, because I think that would be a good fit for both of them, and also kind of be a good use of their skills, but also not too far away from what they're experienced in. Casey, I think, probably I do see him being kind of like an active present grandfather, and being around for if Morgan and Alex are staying together and starting a family. Like, I think that makes sense. I would imagine that Chuck and Sarah and Morgan and Alex's kids are friends. That would be nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe Ellie and Devin are in Chicago, but they come out to California to visit, or maybe Chuck and Sarah go out to visit. But I guess if they have kids at home, that might be a little bit tougher.
When the kids are older, or they can have. Devin's parents will just watch Chuck and Sarah's kids because they're, of course, in the area. And they have a whole gap in their heart for the kids that they aren't watching.
Well, here's another interesting thing. you could like also think about, hopefully, because all the spy stuff is done, like Sarah is able to have more of a relationship with her mom, and she's able to have a relationship with her adopted sister.
That's interesting.
That would be nice. I think Gary Cole would be a grandfather.
Yeah,
he probably wouldn't be a good grandfather. He probably wouldn't be around much. Mary Bartowski would be around. I don't know what she would be. Maybe she would just be retired, I guess. I think she deserves to be retired after working for Volkov Industries as a mole.
And I think Volkov should make an appearance for selfish reasons.
He's still alive. That's true.
He's still alive. He could come back and make he could be like a grandfather figure as well.
To who? He's going to be a grandfather figure to people who aren't his grandchildren?
Yeah, why not?
But couldn't he actually...
Like an uncle figure.
Well, Vivian could have children. Yeah. He could actually be an actual grandfather.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so like Vivian comes back and like who's single? Well, no. I was going to say Vivian could get with Shaw, but Shaw is bad. But if Shaw became good again, if Shaw was unbrainwashed, then he and Vivian could have a child. Okay, anyway, being serious, I agree with everything you said. I think that I don't want, like, it was kind of posited by multiple actors, including like Yvonne and Zach, that like Chuck and Sarah might not be done with the spy life. And I have like a physical aversion to that because like so much of the final seasons is about them wanting to be out of the spy life. And I know it's hard. Like, I know that it's like a source of conflict for both of them. And like, do they want to leave the spy life? Do they not want to leave the spy life? But I think like I guess I don't want them to go back to like paper pushing jobs. I definitely don't want Chuck to go back to the Buy More, but I do want them to be together. I would like Sarah to regain her memory. I don't know if that's realistic based on how brain things work, but I would like her to regain her memory. I would like them to start a family, and I guess Carmichael Industries, like the tech company, is fine. Like, I don't know. I kind of like them to do something else, but that's fine. They can do that. Yeah, Morgan and Alex having some kids, hanging out. Jeff and Lester, I hope, like, kind of settle down. I don't think this is problematic to say, but I would like them to realize their feelings for each other and maybe like have like either like a romantic relationship or maybe just like a platonic like life partner situation. Like maybe they buy a house together and they're like the two uncle figures. We can get Volkov out of here. He can be doing something else. They could be the uncle figures. And like we actually trust them with children these days.
Huh.
Part of the problem was that they hadn't admitted their like either romantic or like strong platonic feelings for one another. And like not once they do that, then they really settle down. They become like nice and calm and they just like they're trustworthy, you know?
So you think that when the show ends, they're going off to Germany to become rock stars. Do you think that their music careers take off or they do, but not for that long, so they have to come back to the States?
That's actually, so I had forgotten that happened. So thank you for calling me out, keeping me honest. I do think that their careers take off. I think they make a lot of money and they have like, maybe like they have like more debauchery ahead of them, I would say.
Ooh.
But like within the next 10 years, like they're kind of like the rock stars who you hear about like, yeah, now they just kind of like own a ranch and they're not like obscenely wealthy and like in the public image anymore. Like they just come back to LA. They've realized that they're always going to be together. They buy it's not like a mansion, but it's like a nice house in a nice area of Southern California. And then they're there and they just like offer pearls of wisdom based on their experience. And maybe there's like a room in their basement where that sounds creepy. I just mean like they have all their memorabilia of their time as rock stars and like they take the kids in there and the kids are like, that was you? And they're like, yeah. And then they have like they share a little look with each other and it's just nice. Do you think they go on tour at any point with, I don't remember his name, and if you remember his name, I will give you $5, but the rock star that Chuck befriends, who is played by the little guy? Is his name like Declan? Is it something like that? Damien? I'm going to look it up, but you meanwhile try to remember what it is.
Oh.
Truck versus the Third Dimension is the episode. It was nothing like what I suggested.
I have no idea. Oh, no, wait, hold on.
You got this? It's a very, like, you probably had someone in your school class with this first name. It was a very, like, it is a very common, like, white boy name. And then the last name is also a very common white man first name. It's a first name. They both sound like first names.
That doesn't narrow it down at all. I have no idea. It's gonna, when you say it, it's gonna.
Tyler Martin.
Tyler Martin. Yeah, I never would have guessed that.
I wouldn't have guessed it either. I thought his name was like Damian Hewitt or something.
Yeah, I thought the last name was something more, had more pizzazz.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have that much pizzazz. But do you think they ever tour with him?
Maybe, like, there could be conflict because they're like the new headliner, but he's the opening act and he's all upset that his star is fading while Jeffster's star is just rising.
Could you imagine if they had made like a Get Him to the Greek or like Joey style like spin-off that was Jeffster in Germany?
Oh man.
It would be bad.
It would be really bad and not and totally unwanted, unnecessary, but
yeah.
Wow, that's just something to chew on. We're gonna do Chuck, Marry, Kill, which is our segment where we choose one part of these bonus features to marry and one part of these bonus features to kill. I think we might have multiple things this time around, but we're playing it fast and loose this episode.
Yeah, so, we are.
Erin, what things would you like to enter into a ethically non-monogamous relationship with?
In terms of a segment that I really liked, I think the segment with Tim Jones, about the scoring of Chuck, I found probably the most interesting, and I learned the most new things. So I would be remiss if I did not shout that out as one of my marries. Some smaller things, of course, I have to mention Josh Schwartz. I would just marry him as a person. I thought he was very cute and very charming in these segments. And then lastly, this is small, but a lot of, especially in these like beginning through the year's future, I don't know why they did this because they don't really do it for anyone else, but like occasionally they'll put some little like VFX edits on Casey where he like references sparkles and then like his hands sparkle, or like there's another one, I don't remember what the other one was, but I thought that was just like weird, and they're like, it's like unremarked upon, but it's just like, it's just cute. And I like that they did it for him because like it's like it seems at odds with the like persona he's presenting, but it's also like that makes it funny. Mm-hmm. So I liked that. What about you?
Well, I think it's hard to pick just one segment, but first of all, I really would have to marry from last week in the Sandwiches and Superfans segment where the cast thanks the fans and they were thanking me directly. And in no way were they thanking Erin at all.
No.
This filled me with such a deep, deep joy and sense of satisfaction. I felt it in my loins.
That's weird.
Energized for the rest of the day. I ran 10 miles that day. I just went outside my apartment building and I just did, it was probably close to 320 laps. And I ran 10 miles powered by that joy and love.
Well, that's nice. I'm happy for you.
But, I think it's, not really one specific thing that I enjoyed, but I think that an overarching concept that I am left with that I will be thinking about is that I'm really happy to support and be a part of the show, even in our minuscule way, very small, insignificant way, because I feel like the attitude of the cast and the actors and the culture that they have, I think is very genuine and sincere, and like watching them talk in these segments has been very affirming. And I think that, I don't think they're lying here or putting on airs, but everyone seems to me to be like just really good, solid, down to earth people. And I think that, for a show that we have watched in depth ad nauseum discussed, like, I think that I feel good about it because none of the cast members are really jerks or not grateful for the show, and it means a lot to them. And I just think that they're really, you could grab a beer with any of them and I think it would be a delightful time. So I'm glad that we're able to support them, and I'm glad that they appreciate that support.
That's really sweet.
So what do you want to kill?
So I actually struggled with this because I enjoyed a lot of the bonus features, like to varying degrees. Like the tearing down of the Bymar was, as we mentioned last week, like very fascinating, but there was not like a ton going on plot wise. And so I kind of struggled here. Just something that gave me pause, I would say, more than like that actually I disliked, was in the Chuck Through the Years segment. They talk about a lot about Yvonne like not having experience and not like with comedy. With like Sarah not being a funny role, which I thought was interesting because what stood out to me is she's giving at a panel at Comic-Con in 2010, which would have been like season 4, maybe season 5, depending on when it was. She's talking about how she hasn't had a chance in playing Sarah thus far to be funny, which I don't think is true, first of all, because like Sarah has definitely been funny in seasons 1 through 3. Like, maybe she's more of a, like, comedy player in season 4. I know we talked about, like, the scene with Morgan and the action figures, like, and how that stood out to us, where she's usually not, like, in the Buy More funny plotline. She's usually not in, like, the Morgan antics plot lines. But, like, I definitely think she's funny, and she has jokes and stuff. And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way hearing like Fidek and Schwartz talk about it. I think what they meant is like she's generally a funnier, more emotion, or she's generally like more action heavy, serious character who's like lifts a lot of the emotions. But it just kind of had a vibe, especially since she's like one of the only like female characters. It was kind of like, girls aren't funny, and it made me feel weird the way they were describing it. I'm sure it's not what they meant, but it was just I would have taken another pass at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to find a kill for this because everything I feel like was pretty solid. I think maybe as far as blooper reels go, I wasn't that impressed with the blooper reel last week. I think that some of the blooper reels have been funnier, like they've been a little bit more outrageous, or there's been kind of more funny surprises or just kind of quirky accidental things, but I feel like they didn't really have that many bloopers this time, so that's my only negative. Scooter scale
So I'm gonna give this 4.5 for the entirety of the bonus features.
Cool.
I found as I mentioned, I really enjoyed them. I thought they were ranging from fascinating to I actually learned things to like emotional. And I actually highlighted in my notes that I felt more emotional watching these bonus features than I did through a lot of the final season, like a lot of the actual episode. Like, I think seeing how much the actors really valued playing these characters and being a part of this, and how much they valued their fans, which once again is not me and is you, was just like very affecting. Like you mentioned in your Mary, it just made me feel like I was part of something, which like objectively I just watched a TV show, but like watching this, it made me feel like I was part of this like legacy and this like shift in like modern television, and it's cool. So 4.5 for me.
I'm going to go ahead and give it 6 out of 5 corn dogs.
Whoa!
What? You can't do that. That's against the rules. Guess what? I make up the rules and I'm saying it's allowed.
What do you have in your hand?
This is a pen and it's a writing utensil.
Wow. Write a 6.
6 in the air. 6 corn dogs. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 6. I think this is just a really solid assortment of bonus content, especially for the final season. I think that they did a really nice job. I don't think that they skimped it all. There's been previous seasons where I think the bonus features have been kind of lacking, although sometimes they have their highlights. Sometimes they're just kind of like filler content. I think this assortment is all filler. No, sorry, God, the opposite of that. All killer, no filler. And I thought it was really nice. And I do appreciate kind of getting to have that candid glimpse behind the scenes of things, because that does mean a lot to me. And I feel more emotionally connected to the show now, which is weird. I didn't think that would be able to happen, but I guess I do. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Although I guess I should mention that there are some bonus features that we did not watch. There are 2 episodes that have commentary on them.
The finale and the penultimate episode, I believe. Right,
which we may do at some point. We haven't really cracked the formula for how to do commentary on top of commentary.
Yeah.
So that's kind of tricky. And then there's also an extended cut of the final episode, which we did some cursory research into. And apparently it's just kind of the scenes have a little bit more space to breathe. Yeah. There's not actually any new content in it.
Which if you've watched them and your feelings are contrary, please let us know, because we don't really know for sure. This is just based on Reddit and some basic research.
So now we have the lesson of the past 2 weeks, lesson of the bonus features. I didn't really figure out the branding for this. Lesson of the weeks.
All right, Chris, you're up first. I know you struggled on this one.
I did. This week, I learned that Chris Fedak has a similar sense of style, or maybe shops at the same place that Ryan McPartland and or Devin does, because they were both wearing Lacoste sweaters in their segments. So maybe Devin is based on Chris Fedak.
Ooh.
Devin is awesome. He's a lovable guy. He's handsome, strong, and smart. You said that I was like the Chris Fedak out of the two of us, which using the transitive property means that I am handsome, fun, and smart, and strong. That's what I learned.
Can't contradict you there.
Nope. For one time this episode, you will not contradict or challenge me, and I appreciate it.
I learned the true value of a Betamax recorder in the 1970s, which is $2,000.
Adjusted for inflation, that is
$4,000.
Sure, I'll take your word for it. That sounds
that sounds right. So,
wow.
Chris and Erin versus the Chuck Season 5 bonus features Part 2
comes to a close. We did it. We did it. So Woo! Next week, I guess we're just talking Season 5, I guess?
Yeah, I guess so, which is going to be kind of sad. Do you think it's not going to be sad? I'm a little sad.
I was just going to make a, good riddance time of your life reference, but I realized we already did that. And then we have this whole Seinfeld thing. So
no easy way to say this, but
everywhere has been charted. We've done and covered it all, except for next week, where I guess we'll cover something else. So yeah, we'll be talking about Season 5, doing our usual thing. And
so tune in then.
Thanks for joining us for this freewheeling discussion of the bonus features of Chuck and some silliness, but also some interesting, serious thoughts that we've had, because we're I was going to say intellectual people. Intellectual. Until then, my name is Chris Gillespie, reminding you that food is sexy.
And my name is Erin Arata, reminding you that anything is possible.
I look forward to switching back to our off-mic personas, taking off the skin of being a podcast host, and just going back into my normal, gross skin of just being a normal person.
Very sweaty.
Very sweaty. Thanks for listening. As always, a big thanks to the artist Hadakoa and the fine folks at freemusicarchive.org for providing us with our theme song, Warm Up. If you want to drop us a line, you can reach us at GoChuckYourselfPodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Go Chuck Yourself on your preferred podcast platform. New episodes come out every Monday morning, and you do not want to miss a new episode. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.